Hey everybody, welcome back to my homestead. I'm Esther and we're in my food forest. Today is a really nice day. It's the very beginning of March here. It's quite chilly. We still had snow on the ground last night. Not lots, but just a skiff. It'll be melted. It's actually almost already melted. So kind of behind me here is my row of currants, my main row. They're a little bit tricky to see. We leave all of our stuff out in the wintertime for pollinators to kind of hang out in, and then we're going to start clearing things out. The ground is still frozen, but all of the trees and shrubs and things, they are still dormant, which is the perfect time to be able to prune. Now you can do this anytime after the currants go dormant. That's not a problem. However, we usually have snow on the ground, so we can't make it out here in order to prune any sooner than usually right now. So the snow has really just melted here over the last week or so. Temperatures have been too cold to handle a pruning tool, but this week they have popped up and warmed up. So we're gonna go ahead and get into pruning these. Now I have in this particular row, I have pink currants, white currants, black currants, and red currants. The black currants are the only ones who need anything special. They fruit on 1 to 2 year wood. Usually 1 year wood doesn't give you very many, but still it does produce. And then the rest of the colors, they all give you fruit on 2 to 3 year old wood. So that might be a little tricky, especially like I can't even, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have at least 9 currants right here in this row, and I have others in a different area. But the last summer was a little hard on the currants. They don't really love our hot, dry summers. And these ones are waiting for my fruit trees to grow up over them to provide them with some shade. They do definitely prefer some shade. So these get a little bit stressed. They do get attacked by aphids every year. But again, I know that's going to be changing here as this food forest keeps growing. So let's take a look at what I've got here. And we'll talk about what we're going to do to prune them. So this right here, this is a salmon or pink colored, well, it's more of a champagne colored one. And it doesn't really need a lot of pruning because you can see right here, last year I was cleaning out all this old growth in here and I forgot I had planted this little guy here and whacked it right off down here at the base. So we don't really need to do a whole lot with this guy, so we're just gonna leave it. So this right here, this is one of my largest black currants, and it's looking a little bit full in the center. So what we're gonna do first is we're just going to look for any broken branches and see if we need to cut those out. That's the first step. So currants are known for spreading. Any branch that dips down, and if it touches the soil, it will sprout, it will root. So I'm thinking that's what this is right here. I think it's a shoot off the mother plant, but it could also be snowberry. We get a lot of snowberry in here, and I do try to keep on top of that, but I can't quite tell. Sometimes you can smell it. Currants have a distinct smell. So I don't know. Here you can see this broken branch. So we're gonna wanna cut that out. And this one, it actually doesn't even look very healthy. So I'm gonna cut it all the way back to the ground here, as close to the ground as I can get it. I've looked through here. There was really only one branch that was broken, which is great. That means we didn't have a whole lot of winter damage, even though we had a significant amount of snow. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through here and we're gonna see if there's anything that looks diseased, and we'll cut that out, and which I also don't see anything that looks bad. And then after that, what we're gonna do is we want to open up the center of this for airflow, and we'll also prune out anything that looks like it might be probably 3 or 4 year old canes, and that's just gonna invigorate the plant to make bigger, healthier, more fruit. And then the last thing we're looking for is any let's see, I've got kind of a good example here. I'll show you. Ugh, my notorious helpers are here. They have discovered me. Anything that's growing like this. So it's not very straight and it's growing straight into the center of the bush. Thank you, Kitty. You're super helpful right now. And so we're gonna cut that out. Anything that's rubbing, like this one here is rubbing on this other branch, so we'll cut that out. We don't want anything like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and work and trim this guy up. This, although it was labeled as a red currant, is actually a black currant. So you also, kitty cat, these guys are so not helpful. You also have to remember when you're pruning to prune at about a 45-degree angle or along the branch. That helps it shed water. And make sure your pruners are nice and sharp. You don't want to use any pruners. I mean, these look pretty terrible because I was a terrible tool keeper and set these. I lost them outside for a little while, so they got a little rusted. Actually, it was in the greenhouse. They got a little bit rusted, but I did clean them really well with a nice SOS pad, and I oiled them so they move well. And the reason you want to do that is because you want to make sure you're getting a nice clean cut on things and you're not just crushing the branches. So this guy actually looks not too bad because I pruned it pretty heavily last year. So I like to prune really heavy and then kind of let it rest for a couple of years, and then prune really heavy and let it rest a couple years. And that seems to produce pretty good results. Last year we had a really good crop on this plant. So you may be wondering why I have this little basket with me for pruning. The reason I have this basket is because you do not want to leave your prunings, even in my food forest style garden, I don't leave prunings out in the soil because if they had disease on them, it would easily spread to your other plants. And so like this is dead, so we'll be hauling this and we'll be burning it. What, honey? So the other reason I carry this little basket is because there's no sense in wasting these prunings. A lot of these are just tips and they're really great for starting new currant bushes. And you can also do that with gooseberries, and you can do that also with josta berries. So like this guy right here, this is a good example. So I will just take these, pick the best ones, make sure they definitely are not diseased, and I will be starting those in the house. Now, I have already done this for a few years now, and it does work very, very well. Usually I end up killing them though. As soon as all of my starts leave the greenhouse, I kind of forget about things like this. So I'm going to be better about that this year. Yes, I am. Okay, so I cleared this out just a little bit so it would be easier for you guys to see. So this guy is a black currant. This is a red currant. This is another black currant. And again, I thought all these were red currants when I planted them. That's how they're labeled. That was just not the case. So it's not a big deal to me. I don't mind. You know, everybody makes mistakes. I am notorious for mislabeling my plants if I do put the labels on. So I am certainly no one to judge, especially nurseries that are putting out thousands of plants. Hey, you guys, no, you're not on a path. So I gained a couple of helpers out here. They want to hang out with mom, which is just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video. I did want to show you, I have a little plant right here. So this right here is an example of a plant that I just laid a branch down. Here's the original branch, which I cut off right there. Here's the mother plant. It was hanging really low. So if you don't want to prune it out, like here's an example right here. So this branch is hanging pretty low. It's kind of in the path. So once the fruit goes on here, it's going to get really heavy. And if that fruit touches the ground, bugs and disease will come into that fruit. So you don't really want that. So instead of just pruning this out entirely, you can bend it down and bury it in the ground right here. And then this part will produce a whole new currant plant. Here we go. So that's what I've done here. I buried this while it was still attached to the mother plant. And here's where I buried it, right here under the soil. See, so here's the branch here, and then you can see where it's been buried. And then now, this is all last year's growth. So I will be digging this out and moving it to somewhere else in the food forest. And that is an easy way to propagate your own plants for your food forest. So that's basically what I've done here, is I have figured out a way to just purchase just enough plants to be my mother plants, growing them up nice and healthy, and then copying them by doing this type of a method here, and then I have plants for free. So here, right here, is a great example of some stuff you don't want. You see how these branches here, they're completely laid down in the center, and if these got any fruit on them whatsoever, they would be completely shaded, and most likely the fruit would just get stepped on. So we will be cutting those out completely. So I'm going to show you how to do that real quick. I'm going to take my pruner, I'm going to come all the way down here to the base of this. Make sure you don't nick any other things, and you're just going to cut it right as close to ground level as possible. So there we have it. So look at all of that growth. These are still alive. That would be so much to waste. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this back to the greenhouse, cut out any diseased wood, and keep whatever I can for cuttings. One benefit to growing these currants and bending over these branches and letting them start on their own in the garden is that you don't have to take care of them. Like I said, I always forget to water my little start babies. I know, sometimes I'm a bad plant mom. But it's nice when you come out in the garden and you see that just a bent over branch buried. So I've selected a few, probably one black currant, one red currant, and I have a couple other branches that are low lying. Like I'll show you this one here. Just a second, honey. Like this guy right here. You can see it's pretty low to the ground. So all I'm gonna do is just stick it down here, weight it down with a rock, and bury it under the soil. And then we'll have more currants. If you have a question as to whether or not something is dead or alive, like I just removed quite a large branch from the center of one of my currants here. Here it is. Now, from all appearances, it looks very similar to all the rest of my currants, and this is a very large branch, so you wouldn't want to just necessarily chop it right out. So you can see whether or not something is alive if you just take your fingernail and peel back. You don't want to go too deep, just go a little bit. You can see this is still green. Well, hopefully you can see that. This is still green. Green means it's alive. On this big branch, I did that near the top. And when you peel back the bark here, it's brown, which means this whole entire branch died. Now, like I said before, we had a really rough summer. Last summer it was very hot. It was very hot super early in the spring. Currants put on a lot of growth and a lot of buds, and all their flowering all happens very early in the spring. So when we had all that heat wave come through last year, the currants were just not very happy with it. And we ended up losing out. We lost a lot of sections out of our currant bushes, so it's going to take me a while to get these pruned, but I just wanted to mention that if you were wondering. And always remember, pruning is not necessarily a science. Maybe some arborists would argue with me. I am certainly not an expert pruner. However, I've had good success. I mean, if you just remember those few things I told you, it's going to be better than doing nothing. I mean, the whole point of pruning is to promote good, healthy growth and airflow and cut out anything that's diseased. That's a pretty simple concept. So, you know, if you make a cut and it wasn't quite right, you can always wait, and next year you're going to have more growth and you can try again next year. So when you're pruning, you have a choice. So this branch right here, you can see, is completely crossing this other branch. So that's, you know, an example of something we don't want. Because what happens is this place right here ends up becoming a place where disease can enter this plant. So we have a choice. We can completely take this branch out. We could completely take this branch out. Or we could just prune them back to where they're not crossing. So the way you're going to do that, and we're going to go ahead and do that with this branch, because I think this one will produce fruit this year and this one will produce fruit next year. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut this down to what's called an outside or an outer bud. And that means that this bud is going to grow out of the plant this way toward me, and it will not be pointing into the shrub. And that's what I mean by, this is not necessarily a science, it's more of an art. I can shape this however I want to suit my needs, and that works great for you too. So we're in a different part of my food forest here. These are some other currants I have. I think these are all white currants, and this one might be a black currant. I can't remember, because we didn't get any fruit last year, but I do have it on pictures. So anyway, I just wanted to show you these ones real quick. I have 3 of them here. They may not get to stay in this place because I have a couple Nanking cherry bushes that will probably fill up this space, but these are taking up the space for now, which is great for me. You may be wondering, well, I just wanted to talk to you for a second about why you would want to propagate your own. And the reason that you want to do that is, well, there's several reasons why. Because number one, it's really fun to share and trade plants with friends. So if you have tons of currant bushes, you might have one color, a friend might have another, and you could swap and then have multiple colors of currants for all the same price. Or you might just want to swap for something completely different. And then the other thing is, it's nice to be able to spread your food forest and take over more land. And then the last reason why I like to propagate my shrubs and trees is because it's your sort of your insurance against death. So like I said, last year was a really rough year on my currants. Fortunately, they all made it through. We are going to have to be pruning pretty heavy on these ones especially. But now I have backup plants just growing in the ground ready for me to move them. So if any of these had died, I could just take that out of one space and put it into another, and I wouldn't really lose a whole lot of time. So I hope you guys have learned today how to prune your currants. Don't forget, you don't want to do it when they are budding out. You want to make sure you do it while they're still dormant. Check for dead wood, crossing wood, wood that is growing into the center of the plant, anything that is laying down on the ground, and of course anything that is diseased. So I hope that that's helped you today. We'll see you guys in a video again real soon. Thanks for watching.